Hi, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to our new episode of People Matters TV. Today, we're going to be talking about a very, very challenging obstacle, I would say, that we are facing as we grow and develop our organization, which is actually bridging the skill gap in emerging areas of new tech. And what's interesting today, and I'm going to take you through our panelists and introduce them to you, is that we have actually chosen two industries which are not necessarily traditional to really be hiring a lot of tech. And the reason is because I think when it comes to hiring in digital and hiring on technology, I think that's something that is really so relevant for industries across the board. So I very quickly introduce you to Jacob. Jacob is the Group Chief Human Resources Officer for Columbia Asia Healthcare. He's based in Malaysia, and he brings tremendous experience, over 21 years experience in HR, specializing in career planning, development, and competency mapping. Jacob, a very, very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have Hesi Hamid, Group HR for Development at IOI Corporation Berhad. She's also based in Malaysia and have worked over 20 years as an HR specialist. Prior to IOI, she was part of the McDonald's Malaysia. Her current role focuses mostly on L&D initiatives to build capability and engagement across employees in the organization. Hesi, very warm welcome to you too.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you. So the way we've structured this conversation, as you know, we want to make it as relevant to each one of you. So feel free to keep sending us questions. You will see on the right side, you have the chat. Don't wait till the end. If you have questions related to what Hesi and Jacob are speaking, or if you have questions on something specific that you're struggling with in the area of bridging the skill gap, please do feel free to keep sending questions because I'm going to take them as we go along. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a context, Hesi, from you and Jacob on where is your organization today and how is the business changing and evolving, and how is that requiring for you to hire skills which are very different from what you was hiring before, and also putting additional pressure on the L&D as well to say, how do we bring the whole organization to the emerging new areas of technology? So first, help us set up the context of what's happening in your business and how is that demanding to change the skill sets of the workplace.
Okay, hi, Esther.
Yeah, go ahead, Hesi.
Yes. IOI is a company that is in the business of plantation, palm oil plantation, as well as manufacturing. We do upstream and downstream. So recently, IOI has embarked together with all the other businesses. They have gone digital. So we have started the ERP system. I'm sure a lot of us have heard about SAP. So we have the resource planning system, and then a lot of other functions has also gone digital, like the supply chain, for example, and human resource management.
Yeah.
So that has happened despite the conventional thinking that, oh, how do you make plantation business to become digital? How to manage the crops and all that? But it is possible because the only thing when it comes to digitization for plantation is to get sufficient data in order to make us for us to come up with the decisions that we need to do. So that realization has made us wanted to embark, and I don't think we are the first. There has been many other plantation-based or agricultural-based companies around the world, and even Malaysia has started going digital or fully mechanized and digital.
Yeah. So I'm going to come to you, Hesi, very soon to ask you what does that mean when it comes to talent acquisition and talent development. Yes, Jacob, you want to set the context for us as well?
Yeah, I think, at the outset, once again, thank you, Esther and People Matters team for having Hesi and me. It's a pleasure always to be on your shows.
Thank you so much.
See, if you look at the healthcare industry today, what has really changed is the format of healthcare has changed. And within the format of healthcare, what is gaining more prominence is patient care, not only from a clinical perspective, but also from a service perspective. So today you have hospitals which are really concentrating on providing the best of clinical services and the best of service excellence initiatives. So when you marry both together, obviously you have to have a strategy on digitization. Why digitization? Because you got to ask yourself the question, what's the purpose of digitization? At the end, by doing digitization, what is it that I want to get with the organization? Is it making life easier for the patient? Is it making life easier for the doctors or for the people who work inside the hospital? So I think the contextual factors that we really took into account when we embarked on our digitization journey was, what's the environment that we operate in? Who is the end customer, the patient? And what is the product that we want on digitization? And today, what is my current company status on digitization? So when we analyze some of these things, they gave us the answers in terms of where do we want to go and how do we want to get there. So that gave us a lot of insights into technologies changing in healthcare. Patients want things faster. They want things easier. Even getting an appointment with the doctor, simple things like through a WhatsApp, I want to get an appointment. It must be linked to my records when I come to the hospital. It must, my registration form must be there. So I think the digital pathway for the patient is something which most hospitals are embarking on to ensure that it makes life easier for the patient as they come into the hospital, till the time, if they're admitted, till the time they go out. So that, I think, is the context or the background in which you have an organizational digital strategy. But what is key in this is the fact that what is the environment within which you operate in? That is key. And second is, why digitization? Is it because 100 other hospitals are doing it, I want to do it, but I do not know how to manage it? So I think the end product or the end result that I want from digitization is key to taking certain decisions. So I think, having said this, as we go along, I would explain with more examples as to what we are doing and what is our talent acquisition strategy for this particular year, 2019, as we go ahead, and how we are bringing about rapid changes in the technological advancement of employees who work with us.
Wonderful. So I'm staying with you, Jacob, before I go back to Hezi. So in that change, how do you identify the skill gap? So I think one is obviously the clarity of the strategy and the measurability, which is actually going to be the client, in your case, the patient satisfaction. But how do you as a business identify which skill gaps you have to be able to execute that digital strategy?
Okay, very good question. I think, earlier in one of the sessions, I've always said that, it's like saying, I want to go and study in an American Ivy League college. I'm just using this as an example.
Yeah.
But in order to go and study in an Ivy League college, I need to have a certain level of competencies or a certain level of maturity to go and be part of it. Not everyone can necessarily go to an Ivy League college. You have to have, it's horses for courses. So you have to determine what is good for you and what is it that you want and what is the right context and course available. So when we embarked on our learning and development strategy, in terms of, to answer your specific question, I think the first thing was, with the purpose of digitization and with the strategy that we had, where are we in terms of our skill sets? So I think the L&D team at each hospital was embarked with the task of saying, these are the digitization strategies that we're looking at this year. One was, as I said, one initiative was the WhatsApp appointment, one was the patient feedback system, and one was use of other digital processes to ensure that patient care is enhanced. So in all of this, do our current repository of skill sets, that do nurses, do doctors, do allied health professionals, the technicians, and do support staff, have the necessary ingredients in terms of their own capacity and capability to deliver the outcome on terms of what is expected. So you have the product, you have the process, and then you have insights into where we stand. So that tells you exactly where is your skill gap and what is it that I need to do to develop the skill sets of all these people. And it cannot be a generic strategy for the entire hospital saying that everybody will go through this training and this is how, the end of it, you will be appraised and you will be enhanced on your knowledge of the digital project that we are putting in place. Skill sets are different. Nurses' skill sets are very different from that of the doctors. Allied healthcare professionals are very different from that of nurses and doctors. So when you bring them all together to provide patient care, I think what is key is that how do they contribute in a digitized economy in the hospital to ensure that patient care is not compromised and enhanced? So the L&D team really had to go delve deep into sitting with individuals. All nurses are not alike. Please understand, within the healthcare industry, Nurses work in different departments, work in different wards, different disease patterns, different acuity patterns. So in all of this, if you're bringing in digitization, you really have to ensure that a nurse in an operating theater, what is it that she needs on digitization? A nurse in a general ward, what is it that she needs on digitization? What's the kind of training? So these are all the variables and ingredients that the L&D team and the clinical and technical team have to really assess and put in place that what are our needs and how do we get there.
Yeah. So I'm going to come to you, Jacob, again on one specific example. If you can take us through the journey, pick up one role and take us through the journey of how did you enhance the capability of that particular segment. So then we get that example. So Hezi, I'm coming to you first before I go back to Jacob on, and you spoke about the whole automation and plantation and the different way of organizing and delivering the business. When you look ahead and you say, okay, how much of that's capabilities that I need for the future? How much of it I buy through hiring? How much of it I build? What is your advice, not only with the current organization, but overall as an HR leader? How do we go about that question? How much to buy vis-a-vis how much to build?
For the coming Industry 4.0, or perhaps it's already here, Industry 4.0 is already here. What it means to all businesses is that you have to give much better experience to your customers, your clients, your patients, as well as for the non-service industry. What it means is that you have to be more efficient, cost efficient, better effective way of resource planning and so on. So yes, we do need the AI, the machine learning, the digitization to tell you at real time all information and to give you all the necessary alarms so that you are well informed and you'll be able to come up with the necessary actions promptly. So with regards to this realization, yes, everybody's going for digitization, full automation, mechanization. Yeah, we've gone into that. In going towards that, yeah, we do need the technologists. As you can see, the software engineers, those with the skills and the knowledge or the discipline in programming and whatnot.
Yeah.
Provide that technological solution and to assist with whatever process engineering that the company or the business needs.
Yeah.
These are the technologies. But what happens to the rest of the other employees who are still in the company and they still need to do what it is that they're supposed to do to support the business. Now, not everyone is required to have that IT discipline or that IT qualification. In fact, at the moment when we embark on digitization, we have to source for talents or we have to source for the specialists outside our company, the consultants, the solution providers. Perhaps it is quite correct to say that Malaysia has a scarcity of that high technology specialists. The graduates from that field is very much in limited supply, in which we may have to talents from overseas, not within Malaysia. But the government or Malaysia is starting to have all these programs such as TVET, whereby it's technical engineering, vocational training to build in more and more competent engineers. Those are very to build in more specialists in the technology field as well as engineering. So that might be the new hires that we might need in 3 or 4 years' time in order to take care of the digitization or mechanization tools that we have. For the time being, how do we prepare our employees for the way forward?
Yeah.
The executives or the managers who's at plantation or who's at the construction site, who's managing projects, who's managing the whole operations, what kind of competency that they need to have. I'm looking at all these required competencies in their new job role. Yeah. And it says to me that they might have to have all these related thinking competencies such as critical thinking, analytical thinking, complex problem solving competencies, design thinking competencies, okay, as addressed during the economic forum at beginning of last year. They have stated about 10 competencies that is emerging and critical or necessary for the way forward in Industry 4.0. And some skills might be diminishing in need.
Yeah.
When you look at it, it's all about that high-level thinking competency. And this is something that L&D practitioners can start to strategize the learning in order to build these capabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you'll be having a very super duper system that will tell you real time all the information, and you need to look into all this data and come up with a predictive, I mean, you have to analyze this and do some analytical work or predictions based on that. So that will be the new role, rather than having to prepare reports and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to come for some specific examples on how you have been able to do that, either in your current role or in your previous organization as well. Jacob, there is a question. I don't know if you're comfortable taking it now, because I think that may be an opportunity to relate to the conversation you were having on how the way that even our businesses deliver the services to consumers. And in that journey, there'll be some roles that maybe will get mechanized, some roles that will cease to exist. And some of our current employees, we will be able to transition to the new skills, but some we may not be able to transition in the current organization, but we'll still have probably the responsibility to skill them to get opportunities in other parts of the industry. You want to take this question from Angeline first, and then give us one.
Sure. I will. I mean, let me give two specific examples, and then I will also answer the question.
Sure. Go ahead, please.
I think, I'd like to give the audience two specific examples of how digitization has affected the healthcare industry and what have hospitals done about it. See, earlier, when nurses used to go and take care of patients in the ward or after an operation, or if they are in critical care unit, they had to shift through the patient's file, go through the details, see what medication, what has the doctor written, this, that, etc. And then only do they really understand what's the care that the patient needs. Today, you have something known as cart on wheels, and all information about the patient as you move the cart along, where there are medications, where there are other things on the cart on wheels. You also have a digital area where the entire information of the patient is stored out there. So you don't have to shift through the file, go through all of that. So you have the patient information right there in front of you. And so you have to train the nurse how to read that particular information, how medication is to be administered, and to ensure that there is a link between the patient's file and the e-medical record, which is there. When I say e-medical record, it's basically what is the patient, the diagnosis, the medicine, etc. So that accordingly that is given. This is one key change that has happened across most healthcare providers. The second key thing is most large hospital chains are focusing on patient feedback, and every day or almost whenever a patient is discharged, if he or she is an inpatient, or if he or she is an outpatient, feedback is taken on the spot. But the most important thing is, looking at this data, you have standard reports, you have customized reports also, which the system will pull out based on the vendor and based on how they designed your scheme. But what is key is, what are the patterns of behavior that you can look at by analyzing this data. And that is not necessarily a straightforward report which comes, but it gives you so many insights into, what was really working for the patient. Was the patient in pain, and is this something that is prone to this particular ward? Does it have a link to the skill sets of the nurses who are taking care of the patients? Do we need to provide more training? So these are two specific examples of what's been happening in the healthcare industry as far as digitization is concerned. Now, to take on Angeline's question, I think, one is healthcare is very much a people-driven industry. The human intervention of care and cure will never change. That is going to, whether robotic surgery comes in or whether there's going to be huge advancements in the way in which technology is going to shape up, still the human intervention of care and the patient wanting to see a doctor will not change to a very large extent across the world. Whether you call it Google Doctor or whether you call it, records which come on your mobile or whatever it is, I don't think things are going to change. So I think different people need different skill sets. And one thing what the healthcare industry is doing is you also plan ahead for at least for the next 2 years, what's the kind of technology which is going to come into the hospital. And accordingly, there are people who are trained currently for current systems and design thinking. Some people are going to be trained for design thinking in the future. And accordingly, I think people are made to understand that they have to improve their own personal capacity and have the skill sets to take care of the patient of the future. Of course, there can be some changes which happens in any other industry. So the intent and the desire is that we are able to train and use people for our patient care across all the hospitals that we operate in the next 1 to 2 years. Yes, at sometimes, let's be practical, there can be casualties, but yes, that's handled in a certain manner, in a manner in which we'll try and be as helpful as possible. We also try with some of our partner hospitals, try and ensure if they can take, a good nurse is always in demand. A good radiologist is always in demand. A good OT nurse is always in demand. So I think, unlike other industries, it's not just an answer. It's not a straightforward answer that you don't have the skill sets. So sorry, we can't accommodate you in the future. It's the fact that we train you and you will be with us to ensure that as we scale up and as patient care becomes more and more simplified, you will be there to help us to ensure that the patient is taken care. So this, I think, I'm not sure, but I hope I've answered Angeline's question.
Yeah, you have. Thank you, Jacob. So, any comments on Angeline's question? Because I wanted you to actually give us some specific examples of how are you bridging the skill gap. Especially, you mentioned skills like critical thinking or analyzing data, which is not now for one department, but it's something that you expect many more people in the organization to be able to do. So how have you bridged that gap? Give us some specific examples.
First and foremost, let me just start my reply saying that digitization or the industry 4.0 should not scare anybody them losing jobs, or that's the role is no longer important. It doesn't mean that the role is still there. The job is still there, but you do need to have additional skills or additional competence. Because AI, machine learning, those are tools that could help us to do our job better or to carry on our roles better. But if you have the competencies such as I mentioned just now, critical thinking, analytical thinking, it will enhance the efficiency of how the business is run or how the work is done. So, for example, in my previous company, which is a fast food restaurant, they have gone digital. Every information comes in terms of how many staff is within that shift. What are the raw ingredient or the food or the volume of food that they need. But the end story is like this. With all this digitization and with all this information, the employees within that one restaurant, how many workers that they need to take care of the counter or of the kitchen, what are the possible wastage in terms of how to say the effluent from all the ingredients that comes out. What are the possible volume of food ingredients that you need for the certain time, certain date, due to the trends that they have studied. They are able to study during a certain time, at a certain day, or a certain season. This might be the possible volume, so that they can, when they are able to do this predictive analysis, then they can manage or they can plan resources such as workers, as well as the supply of raw materials and so on. And that is being done by the employees themselves. It doesn't have to take any high-level person to decide on how you want to manage your whole operations within that one restaurant setup. So this is what I mean, whereby now people in the plantation, with all the information given about the readiness crop, which area, which segment of the estate where the crop is ready, and how much would be the possible yield depending on the season, or they'll be able to study trends, and they'll be able to manage workers to be doing certain activities at a certain time. In this case, more enhanced efficiency, rather than coming up with actions or activities at the later part of the month or of the year, because the information being fed to you is not at real time. This is what I mean. So they can still carry on the role of managing, or supervising the work, or arranging the activities without losing the so-called role or the position in that sense.
Yes. Correct. Wonderful.
And then another thing is that when you have the competency of design thinking, you are aware of the pain points. I mean, the pain points of your clients or your customers and all that, and you can figure out a way to re-engineer certain processes, or how you are able to provide a better interface with your clients or customers. So the
thank you
to do that. Yes.
Thank you, Hesi. And I think your last comment is just connecting me to the next question from the audience. There's a question from Melvin, and you mentioned about design thinking and the importance of maybe having more broadened blend of skills, and he specifically is asking on how do we actually promote inculcating this diversity of blend of skills. So from a specialized role to actually being able to build a lot more of those blended skills that are needed to be a much more holistic professional. So Jacob, you want to give it a try?
Sure. I think, from the from the perspective of, let me answer this from the perspective of employer and employee. See, I think, the employees who work with us look for varied experiences within the organization. So as a good employer, it is our onus to ensure that training, development, and in terms of technical skills that we provide towards the employee is not just for him or her in his or her own area of work. We have to ensure that we develop, and the word I would use is improving their personal capacity to ensure that they're able to use their skills in other areas. So I think, organizations that are selfish and myopic will only look at it from a short-term point of view. Let me train a nurse only in CCU. She'll be a nurse in CCU, say, for the next 5 years. It doesn't happen like that. Nurses want experience in OT. They want in PCU. They want in step-down HTU. They want in in burns unit. They want in liver transplant. So they would like to get these experiences across the hospital, so that they become more adept in care, and they understand how patients in different areas are catered to. So I think hospitals of today and hospitals who are thinking of having that edge for tomorrow are the ones who would train their nurses, not only for today, but also for tomorrow. So I think that is how we need to look at it. It's not just now and here. So you will also have look at the attrition rate of nurses across, especially in some of the other countries where you have almost 8 to 10% a month is the attrition rate that you have for nurses and doctors. So I mean, what can you do? Of course, I know it's an industry phenomenon, but you have to think of ways and means by which you are able to lower the level of attrition at least by 1 or 2 basis points.
Yeah.
And you have to innovate, or you have to provide them experiences which are different. You have to reduce the number of years they got to wait to move to the next level. You got to relook at your nursing designations. You got to relook at your welfare mechanisms. And most importantly, what is the experience that you're providing them, which will ensure that you have a competitive advantage with your people.
Yeah. So Jacob, give me 1 or 2 examples about how do you inculcate those blend skills, especially when they're not necessarily related to nursing. For example, if I'm a nurse and you want to inculcate other skills which are not necessarily something that I would have expected is part of my learning journey.
The best example I can give you is that when we had a new project and when we were building a new hospital, and the entire layout design of the hospital had to be taken into account, 1 or 2 nurses were trained and were put on the project team to ensure that they were part of the pre-planning team in terms of setting up that hospital. So that's a specific example where nurses, some technicians, and some doctors were involved in setting up that hospital, planning common areas for the patient, and taking into account patient flow, patient flow dynamics, and what is the flow as far as where do patients come in, where will you have your consultation rooms, what should be the size, and what should be the way in which the consultation suites are made up of. So this is a classic example of how we used regular full-time care workers and develop them in other areas where, and some of them can even become project managers at a later stage, and some of them can even run operations in a hospital after doing this for 1 or 2 hospitals. So these are specific examples where this has happened.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jacob. So Hezi, I'm coming to you with 1 more question from the audience, and I'm with the permission of my panelists, I'm giving priority to the questions from the audience. While we had prepared a set of questions, but I think it's important we cover our audience questions first. So Stephanie is asking how we can empower the vulnerable learners, especially people who are, for example, the elder workers or people who are in the lower skill roles. Any examples that you could share with Stephanie?
Yes. So for the adult learners or the group of people that you mentioned just now, actually, these are the group of people with a wealth of tacit knowledge, intuitive, wealth of experience. So need to leverage on that. Yeah. But you might have this concern that they're not relevant or they're not important anymore to the organization because they cannot figure out these new tools or this new technology. So the thing about statements about roles that are no longer important or will be diminishing and all that, I think we kind of not mention it anywhere within that organization. Yeah. There should be no redundancy of anybody in any roles or whatsoever, because each of them do have their contributing factor previously, now, and in the future, despite anything. So how are you going to kind of bring them closer to this industry era is by making them or exposed to learning using all these digital methods or all these machine learning methods or all this approach, because make them more comfortable, more receptive, and to make them realize that, hey, this is going to help me. It's very useful. It's not going to replace me, but it's to assist me. Because it's going to be a very good combination between their tacit knowledge or their wealth of experience and with all the data that's being provided through mechanization, digitization, and with high efficiency of what that thing can bring to them, to their work. So the mind change or mindset change may have to start that way when you conduct the learning for the competency that they might need for their future roles or for their expanded roles. Let's say we're gonna train complex problem solving or critical thinking. So it has to be that kind of learning situation using digitization, mechanization, AI, and I think there's a lot of it in the market. I'm receptive and very comfortable.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Anything to add, Jacob, or should I move to the next question?
I think, just to add on a quick one, I think,
go ahead.
The organization has to look at it from the perspective of both from an organization perspective and from the employee perspective. See, some of these vulnerable learners, you cannot force it upon them and say, we need it because today technology, this is the new technology, we need to train you. See, it will not sell, and at the end of the day, they will do it half-heartedly in terms of going for training and getting trained. You have to show why it is important, make them understand by communicating to them and what's in it for them if they go for this particular program, even though they've worked 25 years in the organization and they need to learn this particular new skill. If you do this, and this is the excitement that we have for you, this is what we can do for you. So what is it that you need to do? Because some of our nurses or doctors have been in our system for almost 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
And for them, if suddenly you say that we are going digital, the patient, doctors who are diagnosing a patient, the entire diagnosis now will be online.
Yeah.
Suddenly you say, the doctor may turn around and say, no, it's not going to help me. I'm traditional. I will write the diagnosis on a piece of paper and give it to the patient. But if you want the doctor to ensure that everything he does is digital, he has to understand the value of doing it and what's in it for him in this journey. So you really have to convince him and say that it's much easier. Radiology reports will come to you on your screen. You don't necessarily have to walk up to radiology or ask for the report. You can see it on your screen. There are e-images now which are available. So by sending this, it becomes easier for the patient and for you in the entire. So that's how you need to convince them and make them understand. See, there are many ways and means in which you have to tackle different strategies in terms of what you need to do for different sections of your workforce. It can't be one strategy. That is, see, customization is the in thing today. And whatever industry you are in, if you need to have that edge, you really have to think of, both from the organization perspective and from your workforce perspective to see how do you blend this and how do you ensure that it's a win-win or a value add for both.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jacob. And I think you've almost kind of answered Rohit's question as well. He was asking, in this technology area, what's more important to develop depending on what the organization needs are, or should we also focus on what the individual's aspiration or the individual's interests also are? How do we balance that?
Exactly. I think the question is, the organizational focus and what is it that you want, taking into account the needs of every individual. And people are different. Everybody's not alike. Two nurses, two doctors are not alike. But yes, there are things that we need them to do as an organization, which is a must. But we also have to take into account their needs of what their aspirations are, what is it that they want to do, how they wish to look at things. So these are all factors which will determine your learning strategy in terms of what we need to provide for them to help them improve their capacity.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we have 6 minutes to go now, and I want to make sure that there's a question from Martin. I'm going to ask this question to both of you, actually. Because we focused a lot on the development part of bridging the gap, but I think it's worthwhile for us to also focus a little bit on the talent acquisition. And Martin's question is, if you're not a tech company, how do we attract tech talent? Specifically when it comes to, programmers and, data analytic experts, machine learning experts, and so on. His comment is they all want to join tech companies or startups. So how have you been able to build attractive employer brand and I know it's not easy, probably you have not yet found the answer yourselves, because I think it is a big problem. But what is your insight on how we can attract tech talent when we are not a tech company?
For me, for any business to survive these days, we have to be innovative. In terms of, because I think there's a saying that says innovation is the key or is factor for survival. So just like businesses, there has to be that realization. We have to innovate, come up with something better, more, produce more efficient, more cost. With all those needs, it calls for technology in any industry, in any business, whether big or small. Technology or technology specialists or the engineers and all that, they don't really need to come up with, or they don't need to deliver technological based function using very highly expensive equipments or systems or whatever AI or machine learning equipment there is in the market. So depending on the need, whatever possible resources that the company or business have, there's always a need for somebody with technological expertise to deliver or to contribute for that company with new tools, new machineries, new systems, new way of looking at it. For example, industrial engineers, they might not be working specifically with any machines, but they are necessary for any business to come up with the process flow of things. So it is or it is very much welcome for a tech talent to approach. And we are, I mean, any company or every company is looking for tech talent in this case.
Thank you, Hezi. Thank you. Jacob, your
see, I think Martin asked a very, very relevant question. It's a very challenging question for most companies. I mean, I don't think there's a ready answer for it, but I think just to give you some nuggets, I think what you need to look at is, one, obviously, what's your value proposition to the employee in terms of who's looking at joining you. If he wants a tech company, but he's not looking at a traditional company. So one is, what are the other levers that you can provide to tech talent in your company? You may not be able to provide the kind of levers that he gets in a tech company, but there are other things that you can look at. What is that advantage that he will have by joining your company? What's your story? That's from a generic perspective. But specifically, let me give you an example. In the healthcare industry, certain doctors will only join a hospital if there is only a certain amount of technology available. They want this particular MRI machine, or they want this particular technology. Only then can they say that. Only then will they say, okay, then we'll come and work in a hospital. Now, what happens that if you don't have that kind of technology, but you still want that doctor, or you want a good doctor to come and join your hospital? The only way of making it is that, one is your pitch, your story. And yes, I have other levers other than, that fancy technology or anything. We will get there. Our plan is to do it in the next 1 to 2 years. But also the fact that if you're here at this time, we're looking at original research in this particular area. So you will get to head this particular research project, be part of this research project. So things like that is what you'll have to come out. It's for each company to look at what are the other levers that you have, which you can use as your competitive advantage to attract really good tech talent, as in your question, to come and join the company.
Yeah, very interesting. No, it's very interesting thought, because it just provides an opportunity to attract those tech individuals that are probably want to be different from others as well, and want to create higher impact on organizations that are hungry to change. Yes, go ahead, Hezi.
If I can add, is that it is a great combination to have the employees in any business or in any organization. It is a good combination to have the technological group employees together with the thinking group of employees, who are competent in the planning, in the thinking, strategizing, as well as to solve problems. At the end of the day, all of us, whether you are a tech talent or a non-tech talent, more in terms of management or the thinking talent. At the end of the day, both of these two groups, they need provide solutions to problem, be it a process problem, be it in terms of resources problem, or efficiency or cost, expansion problem, so many problems that a business or company will be having. So for Industry 4.0, I'm just saying that this combination is necessary. Just not based on just tech talent.
Yeah.
In order to face Industry 4.0.
Wonderful. So it's not definitely it's not an either or, but an answer. Wonderful. Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much. We've actually run out of time. We just have another 30 seconds. And I want to use this time to thank you, Hezi and Jacob, for joining us. And thank you all our viewers today and their questions. I think they were all pretty challenging. And I think you guys did a really good job managing and giving some of the perspectives. So thank you so much, Jacob and Hezi.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And for everyone else, look forward, welcome you once again in the next show. And remember, TechHR Singapore is coming closer and closer. So it's almost just a month to go. And we look forward, welcome you all this time in Singapore on 28th February. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day ahead.